A former U.S. diplomat had said that Washington's hysterical overreaction to a Chinese unmanned civilian airship unexpectedly entering U.S. airspace is proof of the current U.S. government's inability to overcome domestic pressure and manage the relationship between Washington and Beijing in times of high tension. Freeman was a member of then U.S. President Richard Nixon's entourage during the president's ice-breaking trip to China in 1972.
I think there's been from the beginning a clear disconnect between what the U.S. military and intelligence community have said and what politicians have said. From the beginning, the military said this did not represent a threat of any consequence to U.S. National security. And it was the politicians who began to invent a series of theories about the use of this balloon for espionage.
Washington overreacted to the isolated incident by shooting down the airship, claiming that China has a so-called high-altitude surveillance balloon program and imposing sanctions on Chinese companies it alleged are linked to the program.
They struck me as hysteria, a kind of almost psychotic reaction to an event in which facts were set aside and replaced by conspiracy theories. The overreaction, unfortunately, is not uncommon in the age of social media and political polarization in the United States.
As part of the U.S. response to the balloon incident, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken postponed his trip to Beijing, originally scheduled for early February.
Was domestic political posturing to show the American public that the Biden administration is just as tough on China as the Trump administration was. Now, the cancellation of the visit did exactly the opposite. First, it appeared to show that the United States and China cannot talk under conditions of tension. That is very unnerving to the world. It is a matter of grave concern, not just to Americans and Chinese who follow these things, but to many in other countries. Second, we showed that we do not know how to manage this relationship in conditions of crisis. And that too is a matter of concern. Apparently, we are politically paralyzed in the United States and prevented from taking any initiative to address the first two questions. Can we talk? Can we manage the relationship?
Freeman lamented the fact that empathy, which he said is required in diplomacy and was shown by both the United States and the Chinese sides when Nixon visited China, is nowhere to be found among those making decisions on China in the current U.S. administration.
Fundamentally, it requires empathy. Empathy is understanding where the other side is coming from, what they believe, how they see things. Diplomacy is mostly about persuading another side to understand its interests in the same way you do. So you are trying to persuade the other side to change its views. But to do that, you must understand the other side's point of view. I don't see much evidence that there's much effort being made to do that on the American side.